Again, her website is Patti Conklin, Conklin.com. You can go check it out. Let's see if we can get her this time. Patti, are you there?
I'm here.
I looked at the button wrong, and it did some crazy things. My mistake.
Electronics tend to do that with me, so I wouldn't put it all on you.
They do. Patti, first of all, it's an honor to have you here. I want to thank you for giving us some time on the weekend, and welcome to AM 630 and the Fringe Radio Show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Pat. I really appreciate it.
So I'm interested. I got your press kit and everything, and we've got a lot of questions and things to cover. But it sounds like you've been visited by the big guy, if you want to call it that. You the number one.
The number one. That's certainly what I perceived it as a kid, and a lot of people have referred to him as the big guy. But yeah, it was 7 years old.
Why don't you give us a little bit of the backstory?
Yeah, when I was 7, I grew up in a very poor area, and my parents were not religious or atheists. They really just were not into any of that. So I knew nothing about God or the Bible or anything. And I was up in my bedroom, and a beautiful white mist started coming through the wall. And I remember falling on my knees, not because I was scared or I felt like I had to, but the most serene feeling overcame me. And I literally felt like my body was dissolving, and I wasn't scared. And I heard a voice, a male voice, say to me 3 things: that 38 to 42 would be my greatest growth years, that 42 to 62 would be my greatest contribution to humanity, and that the purpose of my walk was to teach people to become insubstantial without transitioning. And even though I was very precocious as a 7-year-old, I had no clue what that meant.
Right.
And life kind of went on, and my parents were very frightened of me, even as a 3-year-old, 4-year-old. I guess I would just say things or start speaking a different language, and my parents really were just kind of like, stay away, don't speak, we'll be okay. And by the time I was 12, I realized I was really beyond my parents' comprehension. And so I pretty much left and was on my own, finishing up high school. And I had a great English teacher who was all into, the unknown and UFOs and just everything metaphysical. And we started talking one day, and I was telling her about how I saw that I loved sitting on the street corner and watching people think. And I'd watch the words form in their brain and go down into their body and then watch how their body reacted when they spoke to someone else. And she's like, the only thing I can think of is Edgar Cayce. So let me give you some money, and you go to the bookstore and you get Edgar Cayce's autobiography. And so I went to the bookstore, and I was tall. I was already a 5'8", blonde, even at the age of 10. So at 12, I'm reaching for this book, and my body literally became frozen. And Father, what I term Father, spoke very quietly, and he said, "Do not contaminate the information and knowledge I already gave you with someone else's thoughts." And I quit reading that day, and just started observing life, how people became sick. I graduated. I doubled my junior and senior year with honors and got out of there, and immediately began doing nonprofit work to the point where I was overseeing literacy programs in 30 countries throughout Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And that was just this amazing experience because it showed me how different cultures store things differently according to how they think and how they speak to each other and their, priorities in life and the diseases that develop because of the dysfunctionalities within each culture. And I never really realized that my sight was different until my early 20s. And then I had a good long talk with some different professors at Cornell and realized that I was different, that my sight wasn't what everybody else was seeing. And finally got tested and realized that I had a genius IQ, but my brainwave was substantially faster than an average person. And that's kind of the backstory. It's always been there, but it certainly has continued to develop through the years and different capabilities in terms of frequency.
Very, very, very interesting. Let's talk a little bit. You know, the gift that you've been given, and without a doubt, it is. As far as and this, I'm just looking at some of your topic stuff. I paged through the book. I want to thank you for the book. I haven't read it page by page. Life has been a little crazy lately, but I started going through the book a little bit. And you know, as far as let's start from let's go all the way back to the beginning. You talk a little bit about the divine spark, the creation of the universe. You want to talk a little bit on that subject?
Yeah, you know, and everything that I talk about is my perception.
Sure,
you know, because
sure.
I haven't had training and I haven't had teachers or mentors. But my belief is this, is when I started studying the Bible, and I read John chapter 1, verse 1, which said, first there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was within God. What that told me was that it didn't say first there was God and then the Word. It said that first there was the Word, and the Word was God. And what that means to me was that the universe began as a frequency, as a sound wave, that eventually over millennia evolved into a consciousness that we call God, Creator, Source, the divine spark, whatever we want to label it. And over time, billions and quadrillions of sparks broke off from that main piece and became individual souls. And as we went into different atmospheres, whether it was here on Earth or whether it's ETs on other planets, what we would consider to be ETs on other planets, they all came from the same place. And as we got here and we began evolving, we became less than unconditional. We started being conditional. We started developing emotion and that fear subset of, you know, anger, jealousy, whatever. And our high frequency that made us just light started slowing down and actually became dense. And if you go to verse, I think it's 14, it says, and the Word became form. And for me, what that meant was the conditional words that we started speaking actually started creating a density, and we came out of it. We became dense form. And, you know, over evolution again, we began losing our vibrational energy in alignment with the universe. And we added on what people would call the chakra system, the auric field that's outside of the body. And for me, that was kind of like the anchor, you know, to hold on to the universal spark piece. And over the last 5,000 to 7,000 years, we've managed to muck it up. So most of our healing modalities are working in the auric field, but that's not the field that needs to be cleared. It's really what in science we would consider the immune system or the subtle energy field, the energy that we came to this planet with. So when I'm looking at the world, I'm just seeing particles. I'm kind of in grayscale. So unless a person speaks to me, I can't define their essence out of all of the other particles that are around them. Right. And I think that that's really what we began life as. I think that everything was a sound frequency, and out of that created, you know, God was formed out of the essence of just evolution.
How long ago do you think, Patti?
Oh, I think just millennia. I think it's just infinite. I think, you know, hundreds and tens of thousands of years ago. I think that it goes way back probably to the outer reaches of what we would consider to be our known universe. You know, I think with the technology that we've developed and we're able to see star clusters explode and, you know, going back of what would be millions of years, I think it was that long ago. But I think there was a time in space when it was simply frequency without a consciousness. And that consciousness finally evolved into what we consider to be God. And
yeah, well, that's a different look at it, you know. I mean, that's the one thing that has been, I think that at least confuses me, or I shouldn't say confuses, but that I always question is, where did it all kind of start from? And I think that's, you know, now we're talking, if we take the purely scientific out, you know, some scientists believe in the Big Bang Theory. I mean, there's so many different things. It's hard to wrap your mind around it. There's so much to it. But even before all of that, if whatever the term, God, whatever we want to use, the Creator, the number one, the all
the big guy.
Right.
Yep.
And even the definition of that is I mean, everybody defines God a little bit different. Some people try to relate God is like a human form. Is God a consciousness? I mean, it's so complex. But somewhere something had to kind of trigger the whole thing. Again, the universe is infinite. It keeps ever growing. I don't know if we'll ever see in our lifetime. Well, I know we won't see where it starts and stops. I think it's just a never-ending reaction that goes on and on. But like I said, something had to start it somewhere, and why not that this couldn't have been it?
I think that from a quantum physics standpoint, it makes perfect sense to me. It makes perfect sense, and especially when, if we want to pull the Bible into it, I mean, even the Bible says, first there was the Word, and what is Word? It's a tone. It's a frequency. It's how we communicate, and it doesn't say there was an almighty being. And, people have said to me, why are you saying God is a he and not goddess? I get that a lot.
Right.
And it's like, you know what, this is what I think. What you believe the most, what you trust the most, whether it's male or female, is the tonal quality of what you'll hear. When I was little, I had a mistrust for females, and I did not trust females. I did not trust my mother. I did not trust the females around me. The only thing that I trusted was male. So I heard a male voice. But I think if it was totally reversed and I had a complete mistrust of males, I think I would have heard a female voice. I think that it would have taken on the tonal quality that I needed in order to understand it. So I don't think there's a gender. I say father because I hear a male voice, but I don't think it's an all-knowing. I don't think it's someone who is sitting up there judging or going, wow, 10 people prayed for you and 20 people prayed for you, so you 10 person, I'm going to let you die because not enough people prayed for you today.
Right.
I mean, I don't think it happens that way. I think that the experiences we have in this human form are just that. They're just experiences. And we attempt to put meaning and concept to them. But we, as human beings, it's taking that personal responsibility and understanding that no one walking this earth can make me angry. And no one walking this earth can make me feel love. Those are emotions that I choose in the time of the actual event from moment to moment. And I make that choice. You can't make it for me. And so, I think when people look at it in a bigger concept, in a bigger way, understanding we're simply particles that are vibrating. And what I perceive is what my particles are going to create in terms of my life and what I perceive to be the universe or ETs or UFOs or, whatever it is. It's all what we decide within our subconscious and our genetic memory of what something actually looks like. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. This vibration, and we'll get a little bit more into that. But with the vibration, if you will, the vibrating, the energy field. Do you believe that is what comprises when we talk about our souls? That is it that's what it's comprised of? It is a vibrating, intelligent energy?
It is. And when scientists talk about the Big Bang, I kind of refer to the Big Bang event as when billions and billions and quadrillions of souls broke off from source. That consciousness that evolved. That Big Bang to me is when those billions of sparks became individual souls. And, people will say, well, if I connect to my soul, if I can meditate and get deep and connect to my soul, then I'm fully connected to source. And it's like, no, you're not. Your soul is here to learn. And while it may be consciously much more aware and integrated with source than you are consciously, it is still here learning an emotional process, if you will, that if you go behind the soul, remember, when you were a kid, you went to camp and you had those collapsible sippy cups,
Sure.
Camping cups. That's when I look at somebody's body, I see that sitting right above their sternum where the heart center is considered. I see these layers, and I see what we would consider to be the heart center. But behind that, I see what we consider to be the immune system, or in my world, the subtle energy field, the actual energy field that we came to this planet with. Behind that, I see the soul, the spark, that piece of God. But behind that, I see the tunnel. And it's everything you hate and fear about yourself. It's every horrible thought you've ever had in your life, and horrible action, and anything that, you've genetically brought through, or, if you believe in past lives, that you brought through in a past life. And beyond that, you find the divine spark, and you find that pure piece of the universe that's stored in all of us. And so, when I encourage people to work through their tunnel, work through their hatreds, that the soul and the tunnel are equal. They're the duality that you have to understand in order to move through to that pure piece of vibration. I never understood when 18 years ago, when I began doing this work, and I would go to conferences and people would be talking about bringing universal energy in through the crown chakra, through the head. And I remember just looking at them going, why would you do that? And they're like, well, because we're connecting to source. It's like, you have the most pure piece of source inside of you. Why would you ever reach outside of it? And so I think it's just looking at those different layers that we as human consciousness of what we've developed into need to continue to grow and nurture and understand truly what unconditionalism is. Not unconditional love per se, but unconditionalism in terms of being the true observer from a vibrational standpoint, where you're not reacting to the different paradigms taking place in your world.
Interesting. A question that one of our listeners sent in, it says, does Patti believe that the universe is 13 billion years old?
I suspect it's older. I just get the sense that it's older than 13 billion. I don't think I don't think we can put a beginning time frame on it yet. I know that people talk about different dimensions, and that the dimensions going out relate to, a billion years of, where we are dimensionally. And I don't know. That's the easiest answer. I really don't know, but my sense is it's older.
Gotcha. These, again, getting back to these vibrational energies, and let's talk about, if we can, kind of jumping all over the place, but that's what makes it fun. As far as like reincarnation, okay, a lot of people, of course, people take many different takes on things. There's people that feel that when they pass away, that's it. There's nothing there. There's other people that have claimed, people that have experienced near-death experiences have claimed to have died and, passed away, have seen what they call, the light in the tunnel, light beings, all kinds of different things. And then, of course, there's the whole study of the paranormal. With reincarnation, do you believe, well, first of all, I guess I got to back this up a little bit. Maybe I'm getting a little too ahead of myself. When we leave this physical body, when we're no longer occupying it, we pass on. Obviously, the energy leaves and goes somewhere else. Do you believe that at that point in time, we have an opportunity, that vibrational energy, that soul essence, whatever we want to call it? Do you believe that we have an opportunity or the ability to go ahead and do a repeat and try it again?
I kind of take us back to a few minutes ago when we were talking about the billions of sparks breaking off from the universe. In my experience, what I believe happened when I as a soul or you as a soul broke off from that main source every sojourn you were ever going to experience, whatever body you were going to inhabit or whatever physical form you were going to take or entity form you were going to take was contracted in that second. Everything from breaking off from spark until you evolve and ascend to go back to spark. Every single lifetime that you have has already been agreed upon. So you can't screw it up. You just can't mess it up. The day you die, you will have accomplished whatever you were put here between you and Source agreed upon to do. So in sitting with hundreds and thousands of people that have passed who have wanted me there when they died, what actually takes place is the core belief that you have is what actually forms as you begin to leave your body. So if you have a belief that Jesus will be there, then Jesus literally materializes. Those particles become Jesus according to what your belief of Jesus looks like. I've sat with avowed Satanists before, and Satan appears, their version of Satan. And I can tell you, it's inky, black, real darkness when that takes place. I've been with people who just believe they go to the ground and their particles just go into part of, the whole particle field without shape or form. I've been with people with Abraham or Moses or loved ones. Whatever your core belief is at the time that you die is what actually appears. The first person I ever sat with was a little 7-year-old little girl in western Michigan, and she was dying of cystic fibrosis. And her parents were alcoholics and drug users, and they were in the house as she lay dying, and they were completely stoned, just not even in the same room with her. And I had gotten called in. I was part of Make-A-Wish Foundation at that point. And I went into the house, and, this little girl's dying. She's just dying. And I had, for some reason, taken my Bible with me, and that's not something I would normally do. But I had taken my Bible, and she loved the brocade. And so I asked her what she really loved, and she whispered to me that she loved Winnie the Pooh. And so I sang Loggins and Messina's Winnie the Pooh, and then I realized she had no reference of what was going to happen to her, and she was scared. So I decided on Jesus, and not for any specific reason, just that was what came to me. And so I talked to her about this person who was going to come help her. And leave her body and what was going to take place. And then we'd sing Winnie the Pooh some more. And she died in my arms. And as her soul started coming out, Jesus appeared. Wow. And took her soul. And I think that when that takes place, if you're meant to be in particle form for the next 100 years, then that's all you are. And if you're meant to incarnate and move on to the next sojourn as what we consider an alien on Mercury or Saturn or wherever, and that's what your next sojourn is. So I think that predestiny really goes a lot bigger than what we expect it to.
Gotcha. This is it's a diverse subject, Patti.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I know, I wrote this book 16 years ago, and I sat on it, because I just felt like people weren't quite ready for it, and I personally wasn't quite ready for it, that I really needed to know that I was fully understanding of what I believe I know, and be solid with it before the book came out.
Very, very interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the gift that you have and that you help people with is your vision. You can see things others can't see, and then you can also, do you see or detect the vibrations, or how do you comprehend that? How do you sense those?
When you're watching television and the cable goes out and you get snow,
yeah,
that's my world. I mean, that's literally my world. So as soon as someone starts speaking to me, their particles actually start either creating words or a movie. So while I'm interested in hearing what they have to say, their body's giving me the literal truth of what actually happened. And so they may say, oh, life was great, and, blah, 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 and the body's going, nope, talk to him about age 17, and may show me the movie of what actually happened, and then I'll kind of play detective and get them to start talking about it, because it doesn't do any good if I just tell them what happened. I need them to kind of look at their behavioral pattern, their emotional pattern through life. So, but for personally, if I go, like the first time I went to Ireland has a really high frequency because of the type of stone that's in Ireland. And I was completely blind. I had to call one of my sons to fly over to escort me, because I couldn't see if I was walking off a cliff or walking into a building. I had no vision. The frequency was so high. If I'm given something that I've never seen before, I have to feel it like a blind person until I can put edges around it. If I'm going into a large audience, if I'm on stage, I'm fine, no problem. But if I'm going into an audience, say, when my daughter-in-law graduated from Mercer in pharmacology, I'm totally disoriented. I have to have somebody there who will take my hand and tell me there's stairs, or, there's a door or something like that. So I've learned to cope through the years and learned how to define what's taking place within a disease process. So let's say that someone has judgment, and, let's say they're having a stomach ache, and I'm looking at the stomach, then their body is literally those particles are going to make the word judgment along the intestinal tract. And so I don't have to be psychic. The body's already given me the information that they're in judgment. And then I start questioning them. What's going on personally, professionally, physically? And then I may say, well, gee, what took place at age 4? Oh, my parents got divorced. Oh, really? Were you upset about that? Yeah, I didn't like my new stepmom, and everything, the body's going, and you can just see all of the different levels of judgment that they brought into their world by that beginning originating event. And it doesn't have to be a trauma, People can have abandonment because, possibly they were twins and one twin didn't come through, didn't evolve, and develop into a fetus. And people will literally feel abandonment from that twin that never evolved.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fringe Radio Show. Our guest tonight is Patti Conklin. Patti, thank you again so much for being here with us tonight and sharing your work.
Thank you for having me.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you when we had to go to break. You want to pick back up again a little bit?
Well, I just think that if people can take their lives and simplify and really look at us from a particle standpoint and blend the quantum physics in with the spiritual and understand that you're totally responsible for how you feel and what's taking place around you and so forth, that, I think when we get ready to incarnate again, whatever level that is that I think you're just standing there with Source, Creator, angels, whatever, and they're going, hey, what's your next gig? You're going in, you've got to do this and this and this, and because you're on the other side, you're going, great, oh yeah, I can handle that. And as you're coming through the tunnel and coming, down actually into life, the good old Source and angels are saying, oh, and remember, you're going to forget all this. You got to start from square one. I think that people need to understand that when they're facing a disease process, what's really happening is the frequency of the disease. Every disease will have an emotional base. And what's taken place is the emotional base has gotten so thick, so dense, that it finally, energy is energy until it's not, and it stops. And the density stops the frequency, and the frequency changes, and then we classify it as disease. So when somebody has a disease process, not only is it important to begin looking at yourself emotionally, but looking at, is it so dense to the point where you need Western medicine to assist, or is it still in flux enough that you can energetically begin moving the frequency back to frequency? But there's nothing, I don't care if it's just stubbing your toe. There's an emotional component tied to that disease process. And in the body, it's just a frequency that's different than the rest of your body. So if we look at it from a science standpoint, that's all it is. It's our fear that makes it horrific. And it's our fear that will make it grow.
Interesting. When, you talk about, Patti, that again, with this gift that you have, some may call it a gift, some may call it not a gift. Some people may call it a curse, and maybe sometimes you do too.
I certainly do.
Is this something that never shuts down for you?
It never shuts down. It's a constant. I tend to be an introvert, and when I'm not working, if I'm lecturing or at a conference lecturing, I tend to stay to myself. I'll go on stage when it's time and give my lecture and so forth, and go back to my hotel room and stay alone, because there is no off switch. And it's not that I'm judging the people around me or the atmosphere. It's so noisy. It's remembering everything has a voice, even books, stones, trees. I mean, everything is talking. And so there's this constant onslaught of billions and billions of pieces of data coming into my brain, and me deciding what it is I'm going to pay attention to. People will say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want you to look at me," because I may have, this or this inside. And it's like, how much effort it takes to look. I have to, kind of separate you out from everybody else. I wouldn't take the energy to do it, unless we were working. So for me, getting away, I've always lived on water, getting in my boat, going out, having a beer, having my fishing pole, and just having quiet is just complete bliss for me. Until
the fish start talking.
Exactly. And then they're like, "No, don't eat me today. Throw me back in." So it has, because I grew up with it and certainly had to raise children in that environment, and realizing even by the time the boys were 3 and 4, having to sit them down and say, "Guys, this is the deal. I can tell when you're lying to me, and I want you to grow up and be ordinary guys, but you have to tell me the truth, or you're still going to get punished, but you're going to get punished a lot worse if I have to see it." And literally, they spent their whole life coming up to me going, "Don't look at me, I'm confessing right now." And so as they, started finding partners in life and wives and so forth, it was cute, because they'd always talk about their father, who's an engineer, and we divorced when they were 2 and 3 years old. So they'd always tell their girlfriends about their father. And then, if they were secure in the relationship, then they kind of start to talk to them about their mother.
Right. And then there's my mom.
And then there's my mom. And there was a list of what I had, do's and don'ts for me, on the refrigerator if they had a new female friend over. So it was an interesting dichotomy in growing up with them, because they really were my parents. They really, I have 2 biological sons and 2 adopted sons, and they really taught me the meaning of what a nurturing family was. And the biological boys sat me down when they were 6 and 7, and Daniel, who was pre-verbal, he was speaking full sentences at a year old, looked at me and he's like, "Matt and I are beginning to realize that you're not like other mothers." And I'm like, "Okay." And he's like, "I don't mean to hurt your feelings, but quite frankly, you can't cook and your housekeeping isn't any better." I'm like, "Those are fair assessments." And he took over the cooking and the cleaning of the kitchen, and Matt took over the rest of the house cleaning, and really made it possible for me to exist and really develop into my work.
Do you, that was a question that's actually somebody sent in. Do you, with your biological children, Patti, do you think that this could maybe have been passed down to them in some way?
It has been. They're really pretty equally divided between me. Daniel who's an author and is co-founder of Evolved Publishing, the one that was pre-verbal. He's a seer. He has the capability. Every once in a while, he'll say something so profound and so deep. And I remember him being, 8 years old, and Andrew Harvey was writing a bunch of books at that time on Mother Mary. And we were having dinner with him one night, and Daniel, at 8 years old, looked at him and said, "Could I speak with you privately?" And they went off, and, he had all these questions for him. And we're driving home the next day, and I'm like, "So you want to talk to me about what you and Andrew talked about?" And he's like, "No, not particularly." And I'm like, "Throw me a bone." And he's like, "I asked him, what if God had a father? And that souls are feeling so distressed and anxious, and people are feeling anxious because God's Father is coming closer to the earth." Wow. And I just looked at him, and I thought, what a profound thing to even think about. And Matthew has my energy capabilities. Matthew can take anyone, no matter how much pain they're in, and all he needs to do is touch them. And he can instantly take away their pain. It's interesting that both boys are incredibly supportive of my work, but neither of them have the desire to come into the corporation. Matthew has been executive director for years, and then, decided to go back to school and get his robotic engineering degree. But their children, the new grandsons that have just come in to being in the last year and a half, what I've noticed is with each one of them, I can see their gifts starting to come through. And they will literally climb in my lap at, 16 months old and put their heart center right to mine, and I can feel them drawing from me, like they're learning, that they're learning the next level. And even the adopted son, the youngest one, has an 8-month-old son. And I remember looking at him the first time I held him, and I'm looking into his eyes to see what gift he has. And then I realized he wasn't my biological. And Russell, the adopted, just kind of laughed, and he said, "Look, you've had such an influence in my life since I was 9 years old that I fully expect my son to have some of your gifts." So it's going to be interesting to see what the next generation kind of brings. But the clear that if they do any type of work, it will be after I pass. And I'm almost 57 now, so I'm coming up to the 62 time when I suspect I will be leaving this plane. And we'll see what they do after I leave.
Why do you think you're going to depart at 62, Patti?
Well, part of what was said when I was 7 was 42 to 62 would be my greatest contribution, and that I could come home then if I so chose. And, I've had a spectacular life. I mean, yes, the gift is certainly a curse when it comes to personal life. It's really hard for a guy to wrap his head around the fact that he's never going to have a thought that I'm not going to see. And understanding I'm not going to judge him on it, but it's kind of like there's this invasive, privacy issue going on constantly. So I think that for me, being told that at 7 tells me that as I get closer to 62, unless I make a conscious choice to stay, that I can leave this plane. And like I said, I've had incredible adventures, and I've been to 63 countries, and I've worked with thousands of really, tens of thousands of beautiful people, and I've had beautiful experiences. But I don't know that there's anything that's left that would hold me here, that would actually make me want to stay.
Wow. Do you feel that for you, when you leave this realm, there's a lot more work to do in a different form?
I put in a pink slip asking to be a rock on Mercury for the next million years. I don't know if it's going to be listened to. But yeah, I think that certainly, when we pass, we're just changing form. We're just changing frequency so that we're not dense. And I think there's probably still a lot more to do. And I think it's because of my sensitivity to the frequency. And you'll hear people say, I can't be in this area because of the frequency. It, bothers me or whatever. And there's no place that I've traveled on Earth that the frequency has been so much that I couldn't deal with it. I may not be able to see, but there's no place that's ever felt uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I think as I leave this realm, I don't think it's going to be just kind of being in between space. I suspect I'll have something to do as much as I'd like to just rest.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Well, your work is, to say the least, is just interesting. I mean, just unbelievable that this gift that you've been given is fascinating. And I'd like to talk. We've got an NBC News break coming up in about a little bit. In about a minute and a half, but I'd like to kind of talk about a few things and cover some other things. We got a lot of questions sent in for you. Can we keep you for another go around?
Absolutely, would love to.
Now, where can before we go to break, where can our listeners get your book from?
They can get
your
it from
website and we'll talk about your work and stuff. But where can they get your information in your book?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble's, local bookstores. It's all over the world, and so they really should be able to order it from their local bookstore, certainly online, Kindle, Nook, soft paperback from any of the major retailers. And they can certainly go to the website and get an autographed copy if they want to do it that way. So lots of places to find me.
Gotcha. When we come back, we'll talk about your healing sessions and some of the people that you have worked with. Maybe we could talk about some of the things that you've done and different things people have experienced. And again, we have plenty of questions that came in for you today. Our guest tonight, so honored to have her here, is Patti Conklin. You can go check out her website at patticonklin.com.